everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Thriller Thursday. So for today's video I'm going to be talking about the solved murder of Gianni Versace. Before I start, I'd just like to say that I mean no offence by making these videos. They are just for educational and awareness purposes. So Gianni Versace was born on the 2nd of December in 1946 in Italy. He actually came from a designer family and his mum was a famous dressmaker. When he was 26 he moved to Milan to do some work with some other brands, and then eventually in 1978 he launched his first women's collection, and then in September 1978 he launched his first menswear collection. So Versace was very unique and also very successful. He was the first designer to start inviting celebrities to sit front row of his fashion shows, and this allowed him to build relationships with them, and then he also became very famous.
I like drinking fresh water. I love my work. I'm play with my work, and then I like to design, not just for fashion. I design a lot for theater too. I adore.
And also for rock musicians.
Absolutely.
Within 10 years of starting, Versace had built a fashion empire worth $800 million. Later in life he developed a rare type of inner ear cancer and had to take 2 years off of work because of this, and luckily recovered. His final fashion show where he presented his final collection was at the Ritz Hotel in Paris, and Naomi Campbell was one of the supermodels that walked in his final presentation. At the time of Versace's death he was living in Miami and he loved this. It had a big party scene, also a big gay community, so it was perfect for him and he loved the energy that was there. So he bought a huge house there. It was a waterfront property which is now known as the Versace Mansion. It was a really fancy house and he lived here with his partner Antonio D'Amico, and they lived a very happy life. Versace had a routine where he would visit the local cafe every morning as it stocked newspapers from around the world, so he wanted to go and get the Italian newspaper. He was really well known around this community and people loved him and respected him. On the 15th of July 1997 at around 8 AM, Versace was going home, and as he got home he started unlocking his gates when he got shot twice in the head. The first shot went directly into his face and the second one was just below his ear in the side of his head. So obviously because he got shot in the head twice, obviously this isn't a good sign, and unfortunately Gianni Versace did pass away. Police were called at 8:45 AM after his partner Antonio heard some gunshots, ran outside and found his partner Gianni dead.
Tell me your location. In front of the Versace house, 1100 block Ocean Drive. Please get out.
A massive scene formed, including paparazzi, camera crew and helicopters.
This is not just a tragedy, but it is also a great loss to our community and in fact to the world.
Murder in Miami. He was one of the world's most influential fashion designers. Gianni Versace was murdered in broad daylight this morning.
People saw this happen as it was broad daylight, it was early in the morning, and he lived on Ocean Drive, which is a very popular area. One man did actually see someone flee from the scene and chased him for as long as he can until he got to a multi-storey car park. So police entered this car park in order to find this man, but all they found was a truck. Inside was the killer's clothes, passport and newspaper clippings from other murders. But this man had disappeared and was nowhere to be found. Although they didn't find this man, they found his belongings and now knew who they were looking for. So quickly they found out that the man they were looking for was a man named Andrew Cunanan.
Police say their main suspect is reputed serial killer Andrew Cunanan.
So I'm now just going to talk about Andrew. So Andrew Cunanan was a very spoilt child. His parents weren't rich by any means, but they gave up everything in order to give him what he wanted. They bought him a sports car, he had the master bedroom in their house, he had his own bathroom, and he basically got treated like royalty and had this attitude his whole life. He thought he was better than everyone else, he was obsessed with becoming rich and had a fantasy of living the most luxury lifestyle as possible. Andrew was also a gay man, and after college he basically just lived off of rich gay men, and these were basically his sugar daddies. This is how he got through life. They bought him things, they took him to fancy events, and he wanted to live this lifestyle that he personally couldn't really afford or wasn't made for. In April 1997, something clicked in Andrew's mind and made him go on a road trip. What people didn't know that this was actually going to be a revenge trip where he would go and kill people who had wronged him in his life. His first stop was Minneapolis, and first victim was a man named Jeffrey Trail. And he was actually a close friend at one point and possibly a previous lover. He was a former US naval officer and a propane salesman. At some point they had an argument, so Andrew beat him with a claw hammer and wrapped his body up in a carpet. And then he stored this carpet at his friend's apartment. This apartment belonged to a man named David Madsen, and this was also his friend, so it was possible that this was a sort of love triangle. So David Madsen was an architect and at one point Andrew's lover. No one's sure when he was actually murdered, but his body was found on the east shore of Rose Lake in Minnesota on the 3rd of May 1997. He had gunshot wounds to his head and back. Before killing David, he kept him captive for 2 days, but the whole time his friends were constantly trying to contact him, and Andrew then just snapped and murdered him. After killing Jeffrey and David, he stole their truck and drove all the way to Chicago, where he killed 72-year-old Lee Miglin. Lee was a very rich real estate developer and was killed by Andrew on the 4th of May 1997. Andrew had tied Lee up with duct tape around his feet, hands and also his head. He had been stabbed over 20 times with a screwdriver and had his neck slit open with a hacksaw. So you can tell this may have been done as some sort of revenge.
Police found the body of real estate developer Lee Miglin in the garage.
We are treating this case as a homicide, and the investigation is underway.
The FBI says Miglin and Cunanan, quote, may have met, unquote, but that there's no known connection.
So he then left, took Lee's car and headed to New Jersey. He found his next victim in a cemetery called William Reese, who was a 45-year-old caretaker. After this, he stole his red truck and left. He then finally went to Miami, where he killed Versace. No one knows why he did actually kill Versace. People think that they may have had some sort of relationship with each other, but people definitely think that their paths crossed at one point and that they did know each other. So Andrew had been in Miami for days, just watching Versace, working out what he did when he left the cafe, when would be the best time to commit this. It seemed as if Andrew had no fear and was planning on killing himself anyway, so didn't care whether people knew he was doing this or what he was doing. So when Versace was entering his home, he went up to him and shot him twice in the head. So now there was a manhunt for this man, and people knew, obviously, all over that he killed Versace. It was on the news, people in different countries knew, everyone wanted to get this man. So there was a nationwide manhunt for him. He was on America's Most Wanted, FBI's Most Wanted, when he was just chilling in Miami in plain sight, before doing something very stupid. He decided to go and pawn a coin that belonged to Lee Miglin, the man he had killed previously to Versace. When he did this, he used his whole name, his passport, his thumbprint, but luckily for him, the man who reviews these items was on holiday that week. So Andrew carried on living in Miami for another 2 months before police received this information from the pawn shop. They realised he used his real address, the address of the hotel he was staying at in Miami. So police went to this hotel and just missed him. They went into the room that he was staying at, and there was a lot of weird belongings that belonged to him, and so they started looking for him when they received a phone call. This phone call said that there was someone in the boathouse, and this is a famous houseboat in Miami which he snuck into. There was a shootout with police, and sadly for investigators, Andrew decided to take his own life. And obviously people had so many questions for him, why he did this, why he specifically chose to kill Versace, and unfortunately these questions will never get answered. And that is everything for this case. So let me know down below if you have any theories on this case. I know a lot of details don't really get given, like you don't know how he knows Versace, you don't really know much, but let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this, I'd love if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.